Height is correlated with a lot of things. Up to a certain height, taller people make more money than the flatly challenged. And the taller residential candidate almost always wins. Now a study finds that your height as an adult has a profound effect on your perception of your health. Short people judge their health to be worse than average, or tall people judge theirs. The research was published in the journal Clinical Endocrinology. Data for the study came from the 2003 Health Survey for England. More than 14,000 participants filled out questions and had their heights measured. The study only looked at how good the subject thought his or her health was, not their actual health.
Questions focused on 5 areas: mobility, self-care, normal activities, pain or disgrace, and anxiety or depression. Men shorter than about 5 feet 4 and women shorter than 5 feet reported the worst impressions. But small increases in height at the low end had much bigger effect on perception than the same increase among taller people. Other studies have shown, ironically, that shorter people on average actually live longer. A postal article, not the postal article. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, an article in English is a verb that precedes a noun, and simply indicates specificity. This sounds quite complicated, and to be honest, it's quite complicated to say without spraying everyone within 15 feet, but the concept's quite simple.
As soon as you walk through the doors of the event, you will be greeted with numerous engaging activities and displays. Some of the highlights include interactive exhibits demonstrating how a human heart works, sections showcasing the spinal cord and brain, and displays featuring butterflies and various insects. Visitors will even have the opportunity to try catching local insects. Additionally, there will be activities such as walking through local plant gardens to observe and understand the process of photosynthesis. The organizers of Bio Bonanza have ensured that the event caters to a diverse audience. While the displays are designed to engage high school and middle school students, there will be activities suitable for individuals of all ages. As soon as you walk through the doors of the event, you will be greeted with numerous engaging activities and displays. Some of the highlights include interactive exhibits demonstrating how a human heart works, sections showcasing the spinal cord and brain, and displays featuring butterflies and various insects. Visitors will even have the opportunity to try catching local insects. Additionally, there will be activities such as walking through local plant gardens to observe and understand the process of photosynthesis. The organizers of Bio Bonanza have ensured that the event caters to a diverse audience. While the displays are designed to engage high school and middle school students, there will be activities suitable for individuals of all ages. The development of methods of learning in humans is a complex topic that involves various social and cognitive processes. Lalonde's work primarily focuses on areas such as social learning, cultural evolution, and niche construction. According to Lalonde and the emerging consensus among researchers in the field, the key to humanity's unique capacity for acquiring knowledge and skills lies in our ability to learn from other individuals within our social communities. Humans build upon a reservoir of shared knowledge through iterative processes, enabling the creation of increasingly efficient and diverse solutions to life's challenges. This process of communal knowledge acquisition and accumulation is a fundamental aspect of human culture, and it sets us apart from other animals.
Why and to what extent should parents control their children's TV watching? There is certainly nothing inherently wrong with TV. The problem is how much television a child watches and what effect it has on his life. Research has shown that as the amount of time spent watching TV goes up, the amount of time devoted not only to homework and study but other important aspects of life such as social development and physical activities decreases. Television is bound to have a tremendous impact on a child, both in terms of how many hours a week he watches TV and of what he sees. When a parent is concerned about the effects of television, he should consider a number of things: what TV offers the child in terms of information and knowledge, how many hours a week a youngster his age should watch television. Armed police have been brought into NSW schools to reduce crime rates and educate students. The 40 School Liaison Police (SLP) officers have been allocated to public and private high schools across the state. Organizers say the officers, who began work last week, will build positive relationships between police and students. But parent groups warned of potential dangers of armed police working at schools in communities where police relations were already under strain. Among their duties, the SLPs will conduct crime prevention workshops, talking to students about issues including shoplifting, offensive behavior, graffiti and drugs and alcohol. They can also advise school principals. One SLP, Constable Ben Purvis, began work in the inner Sydney region last week, including at Alexandria Park Community School's senior campus. The coevolutionary relationship between cows and grass is one of nature's underappreciated wonders. It also happens to be the key to understanding just about everything about modern meat. For the grasses, which have evolved to withstand the grazing of ruminants, the cow maintains and expands their habitat by preventing trees and shrubs from gaining a foothold and hogging the sunlight. The animal also spreads grass seed, plants it with his hooves, and then fertilizes it with his manure. In exchange for these services, the grasses offer ruminants a plentiful and exclusive supply of lunch. For cows have evolved the special ability to convert grass-rich single-stomached creatures. They can do this because they possess what is surely the most highly evolved digestive organ in nature, the rumen. Parents' own birth order can become an issue when dynamics in the family they are raising replicate the family in which they were raised. Agati notes common examples, such as a firstborn parent getting into raging battles with a firstborn child. Both are used to getting the last word. Each has to be right. But the parent has to be the grown-up and step out of that battle, he advises. When youngest children become parents, Agati cautions that because they may not have had high expectations placed on them, they in turn may not see their kids for their abilities. But he also notes that since youngest children tend to be more social, youngest parents can be helpful to their firstborn, who may have a harder time with social situations.
Language death is not mainstream theater. It is not mainstream anything. Can you imagine Hollywood taking it on? It is so far outside the mindsets of most people that they have difficulty appreciating what the crisis is all about, because they are not used to thinking more about language as an issue in itself. Somehow we need to change these mindsets. We need to get people thinking about language more explicitly, more intimately, more enthusiastically. Interest in language is certainly there. In the general population, most people are fascinated by such topics as where words come from, or what the origin of their town's name is, or whether their baby's name means anything. They are certainly prepared to play Scrabble and a host of other language games ad infinitum, and language games are often found on radio and television, too, but a willingness to focus that interest on general issues. This is Hans Krebs, who in 1937 published a paper showing the sequence of chemical reactions by which energy is released in individual cells. It is called the Krebs cycle, which some of you may remember from your chemistry course in your high school. Krebs is a wonderful example, to me, of how a scientist who is determined can overcome all kinds of human obstacles. Krebs's father constantly discouraged him and told him that he had just mediocre intelligence and would never do anything important in his life, as a teenager. What Krebs remembers in his memoir, his father said to him, "You can't make a silk purse at a sow's ear." Not the same quote, but that he had only mediocre ability and would never be a great scientist.
Sea creatures are inspiring the latest devices that harness wave power. This one, called the Oyster, sits on the seafloor and opens and closes as waves pass over it. Cables attach it to generators on the shore. Since the November 2009, it's been powering 9,000 homes in the Orkney Islands. Another device looks like a snake. The Anaconda is made from a rubber tube filled with water that floats just below the surface. When the swell hits the front of it, the tube squeezed above ripples turn its links and powers a turbine in its tail. Prototypes are currently being tested, but the full-scale version will be 200 meters long. This system also looks like a snake. But this one is made of steel. It floats near the surface, where waves make its joints move. This drives hydraulic systems that power electrical generators, like the Anaconda.
In 2005, Japan had the highest median age of all countries in the world, while Australia's population was only moderately aged. Some 50 years ago, the demographic situation was quite different, with the median age of Australia's population being 7 years older than Japan's. The aging of the population is a major issue for Australian policymakers, particularly in regard to the long-term implications for reduced economic growth and the increasing demand for age pensions and health and aged care services. As the population ages, growth in the number of people of working age will slow, while the proportion of people of retirement age will increase. With an abundance of low-priced labor relative to the United States, it is no surprise that China, India, and other developing countries specialize in the production of labor-intensive products. For similar reasons, the United States will specialize in the production of goods that are human and physical capital intensive because of the relative abundance of a highly educated labor force and technically sophisticated equipment in the United States. This division of global production should yield higher global output of both types of goods than would be the case if each country attempted to produce both of these goods itself. For example, the United States would produce more expensive labor-intensive goods because of its more expensive labor, and the developing countries would produce more expensive human and physical capital-intensive goods because of their relative scarcity of these inputs.
For example, the United States would produce more expensive labor-intensive goods because of its more expensive labor, and the developing countries would produce more expensive human and physical capital-intensive goods because of their relative scarcity of these inputs. This logic implies that the United States is unlikely to be a significant global competitor in the production green technologies that are not relatively intensive in human and physical capital. Nevertheless, during the early stages of the development of a new technology, the United States has a comparative advantage in the production of the products enabled by this innovation. However, once these technologies become well understood and production processes are designed that can make use of less skilled labor, production will migrate to countries with less expensive labor.
This trend is the result of 5 factors, all of them connected with globalization, the growth in international migration, the revolution in transport and communications technology, which is quickening the pace of diasporans' interactions with their homelands, a reaction against global homogenized culture, which is leading people to rethink their identities, the end of the Cold War, which increased the salience of ethnicity and nationalism, and created new space in which diasporas can operate, and policy changes by national governments on issues such as dual citizenship and multiculturalism, which are enabling people to lead transnational lives. Diasporas such as those attaching to China, India, Russia and Mexico are already big, but they will continue to grow. The migration flows which feed them are likely to widen and quicken in the future.
Students at the University of Leicester have recently whizzed up a storm of eco-friendly smoothies. This comes as part of a week of events aimed at promoting environmental initiatives on campus. A range of events and activities were organized by the University Environment Team and the Students' Union to encourage students to waste less, recycle more, travel sustainably and save energy to contribute to the university's target of cutting its carbon footprint by 60% by the year 2020. The highlight of the week was a cycle-powered smoothie maker. Students rescued fruit from Leicester Market which would otherwise have been thrown away and salvaged it to create delicious smoothies. No electricity was used as the fruit was whizzed up in a blender attached to the back of a bike pedaled by enthusiastic student volunteers.
Today I want to talk about water and the law that surrounds drinking water, to talk about its quality, talk about what your rights are to clean water, to also give you a sense of what key threats are to drinking water, what your exposure might be, and what we might to do about it, both legally but also personally. Water is a critical component of our environment and our bodies. Your body is close to 70% water. You can go for several weeks, 2 or 3 on average without food. You can only go for about 4 minutes without air. And you can go for maybe 4 or 5 days without water before you die. So water is absolutely critical. And one of the key arguments I want to make today is that it's a largely neglected area of environmental law given the rapid increase in our knowledge about chemical threats to water quality and where those threats come from.
Normally, however, spectacles are part of an assemblage of items, giving us an overall look. In fashion terms, they are classed as accessories along with shoes, jewelry, handbags or watches. But in healthcare terms, they are of course a medical device. And in many languages other than English, they are often described as a prosthesis, an artificial part of the body, part of you, making you who you are. Choosing your spectacles is therefore a major decision. Increasingly people own 2 or more pairs for different occasions or times of the day. There is a phrase for this in the industry. It's called lifestyle dispensing, and it dates back to the 1950s. The idea is that you wear one type of spectacles in the workplace and quite another at leisure or on the beach.
Colloquial judgments are evident in terms such as wow and yawn, and reward the quality and quantity of ideas with the term sparkiness, which fittingly is a pun as the model project was to design light bulb packaging. In addition, the assessment focuses on the process of optimizing or complexity control as well as proving ideas with thoughtful criticism and not just generation of novel ideas. The definitions for qualities such as technical and aesthetic pertaining to users are too narrow and ill-defined. The author provides examples of the project, its features and structures, students' notes and judgments, and their sketches and photographs of finished light bulb packages in the appendix.
In reality, however, the causes of truancy and non-attendance are diverse and multifaceted. There are as many triggers of non-attendance as there are non-attenders. Each child has her own unique story, and whilst there may often be certain identifiable factors in common, each non-attending child demands and deserves an individual response, tailored to meet her individual needs. This applies equally to the 14-year-old who fails to attend school because a parent is terminally ill, the overweight 11-year-old who fails to attend because he is embarrassed about changing for PE in front of peers, the 15-year-old who is bored by lessons, and to the 7-year-old who is teased in the playground because she doesn't wear the latest designer label clothes.
Imagine a time in the not-too-distant future when your power comes from a seamless mix of renewable energy and traditional sources. It is delivered by a grid that manages thousands of windmills and hundreds of thousands of customers. Computer controlled, the grid is able to manage instant variations in supply and demand and provides a real-time power balance. Far more complex than anything in existence today, it is called a smart grid. This technology is a new frontier in power supply and seen as a green solution to current outdated management systems. When introduced, smart grids will result in energy savings and will allow consumers a choice in their electricity charges and to be able to select the cheapest time slots.
I have been writing non-fiction for years, and secretly wanting to be a novelist. When I first started writing at the age of 30, it was with the intention of writing fiction, but I took a little detour for 10 or 12 years, and write non-fiction, which I absolutely have no regret about at all. I think it's exactly the right thing for me to do. But there's this dream tucked away inside of me to do this. Now I was remembering reading something that wrote, who is a great novelist from Mississippi, who had a big influence on me actually. She said, "No art ever came out of not risking your neck." And I think she's absolutely right. It felt that way to me at the time. It actually feels that way every time I sit down to write something.
A team in the University of London found that people who went with their initial response on a test of visual perception, questions included picking out an anomaly in a pattern of symbols, did better than those who were given more time to ponder. Whereas the subconscious brain recognized a rotated version of the same symbol as different, the conscious brain reasoned that an apple is still an apple whether rotated or not, the researchers on the project concluded. When the subjects had time to engage their higher-level functions instead of relying on their intuitive responses, they were more likely to be wrong.
The first section of the book covers new modes of assessment. In Chapter 1, Kimball, Goldsmith College, London, responds to criticisms of design programs as formalistic and conventional, stating that a focus on risk-taking rather than hard work in design innovation is equally problematic. His research contains 3 parts that include preliminary exploration of design innovation qualities, investigation of resulting classroom practices, and development of evidence-based assessment. The assessment he describes is presented in the form of a structured worksheet, which includes a collaborative element and digital photographs, in story format. Such a device encourages stimulating ideas, but does not recognize students as design innovators. The assessment sheet includes holistic impressions as well as details about having, growing, improving ideas.
The practice of giving storms personal names appears to have originated with Clement Wragg, an Australian meteorologist who in the 1890s entertained himself by naming storms after women, mythical figures, and politicians that he didn't like. The modern system of using personal names developed during World War II, when meteorologists began using women's names, often those of wives or girlfriends, instead of cumbersome designations based on latitude and longitude. Short and quickly understood, names were easier to transmit over the radio and easier to keep straight if there was more than one storm in a given area. The system was formalized in 1953 when the National Weather Service put together an alphabetical list of female names to be used for storms in the Atlantic Basin.
Once an organization has its product to sell, it must then determine the appropriate price to sell it at. The price is set by balancing many factors including supply and demand, cost, desired profit, competition, perceived value, and market behavior. Ultimately, the final price is determined by what the market is willing to exchange for the product. Pricing theory can be quite complex because so many factors influence what the purchaser decides is a fair value. It also should be noted that, in addition to monetary exchange, price can be the exchange of goods or services as in a barter agreement, or an exchange of specific behavior, such as a vote in a political campaign. The difficulty for the energy industry is that smart grids do not exist in reality and the power companies cannot experiment with existing supplies.
Umami was first identified in Japan, in 1908, when Dr. Kikanai Ikeda concluded that kombu, a type of edible seaweed, had a different taste than most foods. He conducted experiments that found that the high concentration of glutamate in kombu was what made it so tasty. From there, he crystallized monosodium glutamate, MSG, the seasoning that would become popular the world over. Decades later, umami became scientifically defined as one of the 5 individual tastes sensed by receptors on the tongue. Then in 1996, a team of University of Miami researchers studying taste perception made another breakthrough. For an authentic approach, researchers built various types of equipment failures into the grid to test the system. And it works.
I'm 43 years old and I owe tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. Oh sure, I knew the loans were piling up as I went through school. But with one loan coming from here, another from there, I had no idea of the rockslide that was building. 15 years later, I still experience moments of sheer horror regarding my family's financial situation. My monthly student loan payment is more than triple my car payment. Okay, so without my college degree, I would not have been able to get my current job. For that, I'm grateful, but at what cost? My loans have been accruing at a rate of 10%, and now they have burgeoned to, well, I am English major, you do the math. I don't think they'll ever get paid off. We're in debt way past our eyeballs, and there's no hope in sight. I'm being kept in class, a financial class of graduates whose only hope for attending college meant borrowing money from the government.